WFYI podcast brought to you by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering food and drink, college sports, outdoor activities, live music, cool art, and good times daily. Everyone is welcome in Bloomington. More information at visitbloomington.com.
This is WFYI News Now. It's May 1st, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, it's been 1 year since Indiana started removing people from Medicaid under the process of Medicaid unwinding, the rules around party affiliation when voting in the primary election. And most people who use a wheelchair say they fear falling or have actually fallen, and that's because many do not get hands-on training about how to use it.
We would love to change the world and just make it all of a sudden accessible, but that's a little bit too lofty of a goal. So instead, let's try to make kids more confident in navigating this inaccessible world.
Those stories coming up. But first, commuters on the southeast side of Indianapolis will soon be greeted by new features on Interstate 465. The biggest change will be a new system called ramp meters. They'll work during peak travel times and are designed to control the frequency of vehicles entering the roadway. When in use, the signal located on both sides of the ramp will cycle between red and green to tell motorists when to merge. One car will merge at a time. When the meter is not in use, the signal will flash yellow and merging will resume as normal. The Indiana Department of Transportation says the meter is adaptive and will increase the signal rate to adjust for traffic conditions. Another incoming change, variable speed limits, in the form of digital speed limit signs posted every half mile on some parts of Interstate 465. INDOT says speed limits will go up or down to match traffic. Commuters can expect the ramp meters to begin flashing yellow this week, with full operation starting next Monday, and variable speed limits are expected in the coming weeks. And this week marks a year since Indiana started removing people from Medicaid under the process of Medicaid unwinding. As Side Effects Public Media's Natalie Krebs reports, at least 458,000 Hoosiers have been disenrolled so far, according to polling data.
During the national public health emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government only allowed states to disenroll people from Medicaid under very limited circumstances. That restriction ended last year. Kelly Huntsman is the CEO of Primary Health Care, a federally qualified health center that operates clinics in central Iowa. She says they have seen fewer patients covered by Medicaid in the past year.
That is definitely a struggle for health centers in general. When those patients fall off, we still see those patients, and the grant money doesn't always cover that.
According to a recent nationwide KFF poll, about a quarter of those who say they were disenrolled from Medicaid remain uninsured. I'm Natalie Krebs, Side Effects Public Media.
Can a registered Democrat vote Republican in Indiana's primary? Can someone vote in both party primaries for different offices? Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith answers questions from listeners that came in after a political centrist group put up billboards encouraging Democrats to vote in the Republican primary this year.
Indiana is one of about 24 states that does not register people by political party. That means it has what are called open primaries. Any registered voter can choose a Democratic or Republican ballot. State law does say that primary voters must have voted in the last general election for a majority of the regular nominees of the political party whose ballot they chose, or intend to do so in the next general election, but there's no way to check that, making it virtually impossible to enforce. You can't vote for different parties in the same primary election. If you choose a Republican ballot, you'll only have access to GOP candidates, and the same for Democrats. And there is a nonpartisan option in Indiana primaries. If there are any public questions on the primary ballot, like school referendums, you can choose to only vote on those. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
This story is part of Civically Indiana, a project to answer both the how and why of Indiana state government. To take part in the conversation or find stories like this, go to ipbs.org/civicallyindiana. And for our final story today, wheelchairs. They may seem straightforward to use until you need to move up and down hills or curbs. Around 3.7 million people use a wheelchair in the U.S., but some aren't taught these advanced skills in physical therapy. Side Effects Public Media's Elizabeth Gabriel reports on a free program in Indianapolis that helps young children glide through everyday life.
Savannah Helton is 12 years old. She has spina bifida, which means that her spine didn't form properly. She needs a wheelchair, and lately, she's been practicing how to do wheelies.
It's basically where you push 2 times, and then you pop into your wheelie. So that way, if you're going up like a curb, you can get into your wheelie so you can go up the hill or the curb or wherever you're going.
Savannah is part of an Indiana University program called Skills on Wheels. Kids spend multiple days in a gym learning how to navigate using props like ramps and curbs. But today's the day they practice those new skills outside in an everyday setting. Tony Chase is the program director of Skills on Wheels. He says a child's confidence takes a big hit if they don't know how to use their wheelchair. Kids may decide to skip certain activities at school or with friends if they know there will be obstacles like narrow doors or stairs.
We would love to change the world and just make it all of a sudden accessible, but that's a little bit too lofty of a goal. So instead, let's try to make kids more confident in navigating this inaccessible world.
Researchers have developed a list of core skills that are essential for navigating a wheelchair in a variety of environments. But kids might not learn these skills in school or even physical or occupational therapy. Maria Fuchs is an occupational therapist volunteering with the program. She says she didn't learn a lot about hands-on wheelchair training during grad school.
A lot of times, wheelchair training isn't like a main focus. It is something that can get funded, but a lot of times other things like feeding or dressing or play skills, things like that are kind of the priority.
She says kids often just learn the basics, like using the wheel locks and how to take the wheelchair apart. And that's if their insurance covers it. Kiri Morgan is a researcher at Washington University in St. Louis. She says some people might have a wheelchair, but their insurance won't reimburse them for rehab to learn how to use it.
There's this gap in education. There's this gap in actually having the environment in the medical model where clinicians know how to justify it in their notes so that health insurance pays for it.
That's why Morgan says it's common for wheelchair users to learn new skills through other people with disabilities or watching online videos. But that isn't always accessible or safe.
What did you work on so far? Let's recap.
2 of those hills.
Going down the hill.
And going up the hill.
And going up the hill. And then
I'm just going to say wheelie because I can't remember.
The Skills on Wheels program is also a chance for kids to socialize with others in wheelchairs, something that doesn't happen often in Savannah's small town of Kokomo. And for Savannah, mingling means chatting about her absolute favorite show that's actually roughly twice her age.
After this, we're talking about Grey's Anatomy break. I like it. I think it's been well earned.
You're doing a good job, kiddo.
Now they're back to practicing, but large wheelchairs are heavy. That's why Savannah's mom, Shanda Helton, holds onto a strap that connects to the back of her daughter's wheelchair so it's safe for Savannah to practice wheelies. The program isn't just helpful for Savannah. It allows Helton to learn proper techniques in case the wheelchair starts to tip backwards.
It's amazing. First time I watched her, I had tears in my eyes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my baby girl. She's not a baby anymore. How are you?
Savannah and her parents plan to come back next year. In the meantime, she hopes the program will also have guest appearances from some of the Grey's Anatomy characters to help encourage the kids.
Says, Patrick Dempsey, his character is one of my favorite characters.
Elizabeth Gabriel, Side Effects Public Media.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by the following people who live in your community: Drew Daudelin, Kendall Antron, who composed the music for this podcast, and me, Abriana Herron. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share. and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.